Good afternoon to everyone at today's public hearing of the Vetting Commission established under Law Number 65 of the year 2023 on the external evaluation of judges and candidates for judges of the Supreme Court of Justice. I'm Scott Bales, the chair of the Commission, and I declare this session open. The hearing is being conducted under the Commission's Rules of Organization and Functioning as part of the evaluation process. The subject of today's hearing is Vitalie Ciuchitu, a candidate for the position of member of the Supreme Council of Magistracy. Mr. Ciuchitu, I apologize if I've not pronounced your name correctly. The evaluation in relation to Mr. Ciuchitu was carried out under Law Number 26, the year 2022, regarding certain measures for the selection of candidates for membership in the self-administered bodies for judges and prosecutors. Mr. Ciuchitu is an attorney at law since 2008 and currently is a lawyer at the law offices Pentiru și Parteneri. Again, welcome, Mr. Ciuchitu. I'm joined by four other commission members. To my left is Vice Chair Andre Bevel, and to his left are commission members Lavle Perling and Yuri Gatskin. To my right is commission member Lillian Ansu. The Commission is also assisted by members of its secretariat, and you may see some members of the public or the media here also in the room. The hearing will be conducted with interpretation between Romanian and English. To allow for accurate interpretation, I ask everyone to speak clearly and slowly. Only one person should speak at a time. The proceedings are being recorded. The recordings of the Commission's public hearings generally will be available online on the Commission's website, www.vettingmd.eu, within 3 days after the hearing. I will begin by briefly reviewing the evaluation process for Mr. Ciuchitu. The Commission initiated its evaluation on December 6, 2023, by notifying the subject by email and asking him to complete and return an ethics questionnaire and the financial declarations required by Law Number 26. He returned the completed declarations and questionnaire on the 13th of December 2023. As part of evaluating a subject's ethical and financial integrity, the Commission also obtains information from many other sources, such as the National Integrity Authority, the State Fiscal Service, the General Inspectorate of the Border Police, other public institutions, financial institutions, and open sources. The Commission assesses the information it obtains for its accuracy and relevance. On February 26, 2024, the Commission asked Mr. Ciuchitu to provide additional information by March 5th to clarify certain matters. He provided his answers and documents on that day. On the 22nd of March 2024, the Commission asked Mr. Ciuchitu to provide some additional information and data within 7 days. He provided the answers and documents within the deadline. On April 12th of this year, we notified Mr. Ciuchitu that the Commission in its investigation had identified some areas of doubt about his compliance with the ethical and financial criteria. We invited him to attend today's hearing. Mr. Ciuchitu, let me start with a general question. Do you wish to make any corrections or additions to the answers you have provided to the Commission's request for information? And let me note, we did receive the additional document that you sent by email today, and so we do have that. But beyond that, are there any corrections or additions you wish to make to the information you've previously provided?
I don't have any additional materials, neither do I have any other proofs, evidence. I just uphold what I have mentioned in the requested questionnaires, that's all.
Similarly, do you wish to make any corrections or additions to the ethics questionnaire that you returned on December 13th? Are your answers to the questionnaire still accurate as of today?
The information I presented, I upheld them as they were.
Thank you. Some Commission members will now ask you additional questions related to the notice of hearing. We will try to keep our questions short and to the point, and we ask that your answers be short and to the point as well. Commission member Andre Bevel will begin the questions.
Bună ziua, domnul Ciuchitu.
Morning, Mr. Ciuchitu. If you allow me, first of all, I would like to greet all of you, to thank you very much for this meeting. I would like to thank the Secretariat for their work with a view to organize this meeting. If you allow me, as far as I know, you should give the floor to me at the beginning, and I would like to make a request.
Well, we'll hear your request. I should have mentioned. I should have mentioned, and I mistakenly overlooked this. You will have an opportunity to make a closing statement before we conclude the hearing. So what is your request?
Dear Honorable Commission, according to the provisions of Article 12, Paragraph 4 of the Law 26, I do have the right to be assisted by a lawyer, which implies that the assistance of a lawyer implies giving the possibility to formulate legal conclusions. Given the fact that I'm a lawyer myself, I ask for the possibility to formulate legal conclusions regarding the subjects to be tackled today.
Well, you'll have an opportunity, as I said, to make a closing statement, and if you want to make legal arguments in your closing statement, you can do that. So if I've understood you correctly, is that what you're asking?
Yes, Honorable Commission. Okay. I just want to have some time dedicated and the possibility at a certain stage, when the Commission decides, I will present some arguments, justifications of which I will ask the Commission to take into account when it adopts its decision. That's my request.
Okay, we will hear your statement at the end. And as I said, Mr. Beaver will begin the questions, and then we'll see if other Commission members have additional follow-up questions.
Bună ziua încă o dată, domnul Ciuchitu.
Afternoon again, Mr. Ciuchitu. By notification of doubts for public hearing, you communicated a list of questions identified by the Commission for the hearing today. These are sources of savings accumulated before the evaluation period, unexplainable wealth for the period 2008-2021, totaling over 1 billion lei. The means that your in-laws had for donating the Mercedes car A168 model, integrity issues related to including a fictitious price in the purchase and sale agreement of the Mercedes car, issues related to ethical integrity related to non-observance of the law on executing construction works. And now we will continue discussing each of the issues separately. So the first doubt formulated by the Commission relates to the source from which you gathered your savings before the period of the evaluation. At the initial stage of the evaluation, you mentioned that during 2018-2022, you had funds amounting to which can't be identified exactly, but approximately they represent between 17,000 and 25,000 euro. The Commission asked you earlier to provide information about the savings, cash savings that you had during the entire evaluation period, or at the beginning, at least for the beginning of the evaluation period, more precisely at the end of 2007. You answered at that time that it's impossible for you to provide such information about the savings you had during 2007-2017. On the other side, you informed the Commission that the savings from the period earlier than 2007 came from legal sources, and they were sufficient for you to cover the financial deficit from the following years, and to rely on the savings in cash that you had when you filed the case to participate in the competition. That you didn't mention any exact amounts or justifying documents to confirm those savings, though. The Commission asked during the evaluation procedure questions about the source of the incomes you had in order to cover some specific expenses. For instance, an account of 3,700 euro at Fincom Bank, sources for buying the real estate in Bardar valued at 6,000 euro, sources for buying Mercedes car valued at 5,600 euro, sources for building the annex to the real estate you have in the Bardar village.
Later, you referred to the savings before evaluation as the main source for covering those expenses, and as a justifying the negative balance between income and spending during the time before the evaluation period. Under the state tax authorities information in 2007, you had taxed net income 15.8 thousand lei. Your wife didn't have any official income during that or following period of time. The Commission received on April 24, 2024, a request from your side by which you, after receiving the notification for hearing, you have submitted an explanation and some documents, pictures of documents, of statements intended to prove that the previous time you had carried out activities that generated income that could have made those savings. You informed us you did entrepreneurship activities since 1990, aged 16, by selling in Romania goods from the USSR, and you did it more or less regularly. We have received today from your side a request with the receipt note, and in it you inform us that a third person confirms that they have borrowed 54,000 euro in 2016, or given or borrowed land. So borrowed from you and committed to pay it back. You say that that amount was fully reimbursed. In the previous application dated 24th April 2024, you attached to it certain statements we are going to discuss later today. Now, let's go back to questions of a general nature. Can you tell us, as of today, given that you have recalled of some circumstances, you submitted some written evidence, what were your cash savings you had at the start of the evaluation 2007, 2008? I would like to understand whether I have to say an accurate, exact answer, or can I give you a general answer describing the situation, what happened, so as the Commission has a better understanding, and later we can discuss more specifically. And this general answer might answer some of your questions. It's up to you to give answers as you want and formulate as you want. As I mentioned in the additional explanation, when I was 16 in 1990, I started earning income on my own. At that time, indeed, on the territory of the current Moldova, at that time it was the USSR, and the economic relationships at that time were different from the current ones. The USSR was to be is before its disappearance. At that time, I was able to travel to Romania. Like many Moldovans, we started doing some buying, selling stuff, taking them in bags and transporting them to Romania and selling them there. I did that as well. This activity was generating income, but I enrolled in the university, and I didn't have time to keep reselling stuff. I was doing it later. In 1994, I got married, and I had to keep reselling things out of a need. I started this small business in order to earn my living at that time. In 1997, I created, together with the other two partners, one of which my aunt, Ludmila Boklinka, we created Bentler company, providing transportation services and wholesale and retail trade. These were the activities of our company. This company was closed in 2000 because the economic situation changed drastically in Lipcani, the place where the company was, and it is at the border of Moldova with Ukraine. Until 2004, we had little activities. I still provided some transportation services occasionally. So, during that time of 7 years, since 1990 till 1997, I conducted some activities that were not covered by the legal framework fully. Since 1997 till 2000, the operations of the company was profitable. We also had profits before 1997. And as I mentioned, in 2000, the number of activities or operations was very limited. Can I interrupt you? Can you explain what happened in Lipcani in 2000 that resulted in sharp drop of the services? So the main consumers were Ukrainian citizens that traveled to Moldova to buy certain goods from our shop markets, but in 2000, the situation in Ukraine changed in such a way that our goods was not cheaper anymore for Ukraine. In Ukraine, that is why the demand dropped significantly, and there were less buyers. The situation reversed. It was the Ukrainian citizens that were bringing goods from Ukraine and reselling them in that community. During that time, I gained an amount of money. I have to say, I was making a total, so preparing summary, I didn't keep records of the revenues to see what was the balance, what was the income and expenditures, and how to use the revenues to buy something in addition to see what we do next. I have not mentioned in any report what was the financial situation. I don't have any documented evidence to rely on to report a specific amount of money in a specific year. And that is an issue, a challenge for me to provide you even an approximate amount of money I had. We can say some very approximate amounts, but that amount will not be firm. We can say between 80 and 120,000 US dollars. For the moment being, these amounts are very... So this amount of 80 to 120,000 US dollars is a considerable amount nowadays. Can I ask you for clarification? 80 to 120,000 US dollars, a total money gathered, earned, or a specific amount of savings at a certain time? The amount was available because the amount was changing. Some losses, you could borrow some money to others to resell goods, but the buyer will not pay, and that resulted in losses. Some in-kind losses. The goods, commodities could have been destroyed, stolen, disappeared during the transportation. What goods were you reselling? Consumption goods, starting from sugar up to cigarettes, spirits. We had a food store, and we were selling all these foodstuffs there and beverages. So can we get to the point, this amount that you mentioned, around approximately 80 to 120,000, were over 10. These circulating money, capital, you had to use for your business operations, yes. Would it be correct to assume, based on the aforementioned by you, that your business activities in the 1990s was not formalized in any way? You didn't keep a book counting? No, it was formalized in 1997 only. But between 1990 and 1997, was it or not? No, only from 1997. It was formalized with the bookkeeping system. Please. Mr. Ciuchitu, could you tell us, with regard to the company's operations between 1997 and 2000, it operated for 4 years, and your company, as we understand, had a food shop that you sold. What was the annual over 10 total money? And I cannot give you a figure. That small food store was well-arranged one-room facility next to the road with the shelves and foods. The main consumers were Ukrainian nationals that were coming to our place on days when they had the market open-air market open. On Sundays, crowdy places, and the goods, commodities were sold from trucks. Over 10, I was arranging the supplies. I was bringing goods. I was doing the logistics. My partner, my aunt, Ludmila Boklinka, was selling, was gathering the money, and she kept the records. For that reason, I don't memorize the business-related numbers, the figures. Unfortunately, my aunt died in February 2022. And so she's not there to check with her and give you more specific, accurate information. Could you tell us the profit of the annual profit? How did you divide it between you and the co-founders? Equally, in equal shares, I have to say, as dividends or in a different form? We had dividends. Frankly speaking, I don't recall exactly because I was also an employee. I don't remember the salary I was gaining. As to the accounting-related matters, documenting all this stuff, my partner, my aunt, was doing that. Please repeat the name of the company. Bentler. Bentler. All right. Thank you.
Could you please explain? You wrote the item and your companion helped to sell. But who was responsible for storage? And where and how you keep the item? Because I explain why I ask, because you talk about 120 euros, dollars, which is huge money, a lot of item. Where, how, and if you don't have financial documentary, please just explain where was the place, where did you keep the item?
Deci, efectiv, era și un magazin.
We had a store, the shop, but also we had another room, a storage room, under the ground, in basement, that we were using as storage. And this was located at a different address. That address was declared as the office of our company at the state inspectorate, fiscal inspectorate.
Please clarify what year you talk about.
1997, 2000.
What about before that? Let's start from the beginning. When you were 16 and you came with the stuff.
Da.
Well, at the age of 16, well, actually, when I reached the age of 16, I studied at school. Actually, I graduated at the school in Glodeni village, where I lived with my parents. In the same year, I left for studies to Chișinău. And for a specific period of time, until 94, until I got married, I wasn't so much involved in the entrepreneurial activity together with my aunt, selling goods to Romania. So this is how it happened. We purchased goods in some trip and then transported it in bags. There wasn't a big quantity of commodities, but the markup was very big because the economic conditions allowed us to do so. So therefore, this kind of business lasted until 94 when I got married, and I had to get more regularly involved into this activity. Then at that time, the sales place for the goods was the market in the Lipcani village, town. So the commodities, the goods, were brought from Chișinău during that time, and before 97, by public transportation. We actually reserved all the places for the luggages in the buses that circulated towards that direction, and we were bringing the commodities at the apartment of my aunt, also in Lipcani village, at Ion Creangă Street address, and then afterwards, I don't remember exactly when we purchased the dwelling on the address Shevchenko 1. Then the commodity we used that place to store the commodities there as well. So the other address. I want to explain that the videos that I submitted to the Commission
executate chiar
were
în
taken
curtea acestei adrese.
in the courtyard of that address I'm mentioning. And in the basement of that dwelling, of that apartment, because
Sul acestei locuințe era un beci.
in that basement there was an old cellar which was quite big, and we used that for storing the commodities. And also to answer your question about how we did the logistics, I should explain
Majoritatea mărfurilor
that most of the commodities we weren't storing. We were just bringing them at a time
când se desfășura piața,
when we had the market active in Lipcani. So that was on Thursdays and Sundays. And I think they have these markets on those same days even now. So we were bringing commodities either on the evening before Thursday, and they were in the truck before they were sold, or
ajungeau la piață
they reached the market
Thank you.
immediately from
I don't want to
Chișinău.
interrupt you, but my short question is, do you have any document about it, the storage, or no?
dacă vă referiți la
If you mean ownership rights,
actualmente, deci de la început, acest
at the beginning, that storage from Shevchenko 1 in Lipcani was purchased by my aunt.
în registrul bunurilor
And in the registry of real estate, until now, this is registered as her real estate, as her ownership, although she died. And that's public information, and you can check on that,
Thank you.
or I can provide information if you request for it.
Haideți să trecem la chestiuni mai concrete.
Let's get to more specific aspects now. You informed the Commission that in 2003 you sold an apartment in Glodeni town for $10,000.
Potrivit extraselor din registrul
According to
bunurilor
the document from the real estate document, you were co-owner of this apartment since 2002, together with your parents and sister. And then in 2003, you became co-owner of this apartment with a third party based on a sales and purchase agreement.
Dumneavoastră susțineți că ați vândut
You
acest
say
apartament
you
cu 10.000
sold with $10,000 this apartment, and we would like to know whether you have any copy of the purchase and sale agreement that you could. No, I haven't kept any copy. And given the fact that that was a co-ownership with a third party,
Întrebarea logică ar fi
the logic
dacă
question is
venitul din acest
if the income from the sale of this apartment was divided between the co-owners.
Deci această persoană terță,
This third party was my grandmother, Melnik Maria.
ea nu a însușit careva mijloace,
She didn't earn any money from the sale,
sunt în favoarea mea
and she gave up the money in my favor.
remunerare din vânzarea acestui apartament.
acest prin v-a donat.
So you can say she donated? No, I can't say she donated it because that was co-ownership. She wasn't able to. She couldn't. So she gave up her legitimate part in terms of the price. Yes, from the cashed amount.
Condițiile din parțele
These were the conditions to divide the co-ownership. Because if we speak about this kind of property, dividing this property can happen at any time
prin acordul părților.
by agreement of the parties. And our agreement was that I would take the money,
Căuta nimic.
but my grandma didn't want anything from that.
Ați mai informat Comisia
You also informed the
că
Commission
ați moștenit
that you inherited from a grandfather that died in 1999
mijloace bănești și obiecte
funds and valuable items amounting over $10,000.
Puteți, vă rog, să detaliați ce
Can you
a
detail
inclus această
what
moștenire?
this inheritance included aside from, and what was the proportion of money, valuable items, what kind of valuable items?
Bunelul decidat a fost
So my grandfather was the husband of my grandma Maria. He earned during his life lei.
exact nu țin minte suma,
Lei? I can't remember exactly the amount.
Mă rog, am indicat estimativ.
I indicated just an estimation of the value of the assets I inherited.
Erau prezenți și careva piese de aur.
There were some golden items there as well, and my grandfather bought them in order to
Acelor mici
preserve the.
care spunea. El, ca și mulți, o păgubit în rezultatul
And he lost after the depreciation
valutei
of the currency, national currency of the USSR.
parte din aceste
But some part,
careva parte din banii care i-a adunat
and some of the money that he has earned during his life, he conserved those in gold and silver items. Afterwards, I sold them, but I don't remember what were the amounts.
am numit-o
The amount that I mentioned was just an estimation.
Ați fost unicul moștenitor?
Were you the only heir?
moștenirea s-a realizat în felul
Well, the heritage was done like the following way. After the death
bunii al lui,
of my grandfather, my grandma
fiicele sale.
met her daughters, my aunt that I mentioned, and my mother. I was also present there, and they decided that due to the fact that the items, the goods, are going to be divided as following.
Case care
As follows. The part of the house that belonged to my grandpa, there were two houses in that household. One newer house built by joint effort of the extended family, including myself, my parents.
Deci, anume din acest motiv s-a considerat
That
că
because of that reason, they decided that my mother's participation or share, and my mother's share of the inheritance would be recompensated
atribuirea acestor
by
bunuri mobile
by providing these but movable properties, and the immovable properties is going to be transmitted to my aunt.
această
Provided that this transfer to take place after grandma's death. She died in 2014. The aunt accepted the succession. My mother, as a co-heir, renounced the succession. And after the aunt died, this real estate was transferred to aunt's daughters.
Așadar, clarificând.
Can
Nu
I
este vorba de un
clarify? It's
testament,
not
dar a fost o decizie a moștenitorilor
inheritance
legali.
document, but it was a decision legal has how to take over. Yeah.
Ați prezentat
You have submitted
comisiei la
to the
24
Commission on
aprilie
April 24th,
2024
and today some documents that are intended to justify the lack of sufficient cash savings that you gathered in 1990s, and they from the text of those documents it results that as citizen Ceban Vyacheslav in 1997 obliges to reimburse the $1,700 US dollars by December. Another Chumak Ivan shall reimburse $1,500 by 15 December 1997. No date on these documents. Another citizen Buryak M obliges to reimburse $1,300 US dollars by April 1st, 1998. It dates December 6, 1997. And another document, Lysenko Vyacheslav obliges to reimburse $10,000 US dollars. The document is dated the 4th January 1998. It was a typo, an error, a mistake. To the last document, what you mentioned, it is erroneous. I would like to say none of this document identifies who borrowed the money. It is not indicated the name of the money to be reimbursed to and the purpose of that money lent. Who borrowed the money? Can you explain, please? This money was borrowed by myself
afacere comună.
because it was a joint business of mine and my aunt.
Da.
In other words, yeah, first I answer the question, who was the borrower? It was me and my aunt, two of us. Secondly, as to the contents, that is the not full contents of this document. It was written based on the knowledge of myself and how we could formulate this statement in writing, because the persons that borrowed the money had to write themselves their handwriting, and it was up to their capacity to formulate a complete, full statement. These statements are not submitted to prove the existence of savings. I rather want to show the Commission that there existed a specific economic activity that I conducted and a certain level of assets that I gained. But because over the time, unfortunately, I find it very difficult to give you a precise estimation. The mic is off. You also submitted to the Commission information images, videos, that at the end of the 1990s you were an owner of trucks, vehicles, including Gazelle vehicle, ZIL truck, IFA 150 truck, BMW F34, and a Mercedes W120. 124. Please tell us, when did you purchase the vehicles? When did you sell? At what price? The purchase sale price. The price. As regards the price, I cannot tell you the price because I don't remember the price. From what I can recall, for example, the audio vehicle, golden color, as in pictures, it was my first vehicle, a foreign vehicle. That's why I recall as this first purchase of an own car represented a flag event in my life. I paid $7,000 US. It was in good condition, and I was very satisfied with its quality. As to the purchases of following vehicles and trucks, I can give you just rough estimates. The BMW E34 had a rather same price. Mercedes had a higher price. I can say it cost $9,000 US. As to the vehicles, the trucks, I don't recall. The truck was purchased in an interesting manner from a transportation state company, state enterprise, that was selling at very small price, cheap. But when I resold it 2002 between 2002 and 2004. I cannot give you an exact time, and I resold it for a higher price of several thousand US. IFA truck, likewise, it was purchased from a private individual. Well, and it was resold for almost the same price. Have you kept any purchase agreement, registration of vehicles? No, I didn't thought those evidence were to be important at a certain point. So let's discuss the next matter. The assets that cannot be explained. Between 2008 and 2021, the assessment identified a negative balance, a deficit calculated between the spending
veniturile noastre
and your official income.
și suma totală a
The
deficitului
total deficit is 1.4 million lei, roughly.
Practic, în fiecare an,
Virtually every
perioadei de
year,
evaluare,
during the evaluated
este
period,
deficit
you had a deficit
care fluctuează de la
varying between
minus
minus 37,000 lei in 2009 up to minus 168,000 lei in 2018. This deficit is formed as a difference between official income and spending incurred every year. The answers that you submitted to the Commission, you mentioned that the negative balance every year was covered by the cash savings you had gained earlier before the evaluated period, the part that we had discussed so far. In some years, the negative balance was due to big expenses of your family, like purchase of a Citroën Pluriel vehicle in 2012, the 38,000 euro, Barda real estate valued 123,000 lei, purchase of Mercedes E200 in 2018, the contract value 5,600 euro, and spending what you spent to build the attachment additional facility in Barda real estate of 83,000 lei between 2020 and 2021. You communicated to the Commission that you have covered based on the cash savings. You informed us that since between 2018 and 2019, your son started to work and cover some expenses. Your oldest son turned 18 in 2015, and we excluded from the livelihoods calculation since we turned 2018 because you didn't include him as a dependent in your declarations and ST tax service declarations, tax returns. Please, could you clarify as to your eldest son, until what age he lived with you? He still lives with us. My eldest son still lives with us. He temporarily left our home last fall, and he returned this March to our household property. Do you have a joint budget of your spouse, you and your son, or you have split budgets? He covers, and he used to cover some expenses or utilities, since he managed to have substantial income, to earn substantial income.
He considered it is important for him to participate. Not only him, but also Maxim, the other son, the younger son. He also used to live with us until not long ago, until more exactly the autumn of 22. And he also participated. Their participation was mostly important during the pandemic period. Actually, we used to buy food from their accounts. I don't remember exactly whether we were making payments for the utilities from their accounts, but if we didn't do so, then anyway, they contributed in cash to such payments for the utilities. Well, the question is asked by the Commission because according to the analysis of the bank accounts of your older son and payments incurred, most of the expenses look like personal expenses: restaurants, cafes, sport rooms. There are some cash withdrawals from those accounts, and you now mentioned that they contributed in cash to some of the expenses.
Dar contribuția asta e
But
sporadică sau
was that contribution from time to time, or you just decided that the older one will be contributing for X, Y, Z expenses? Or what's the rule for the contributions? Usually, my son comes with bags full of food products, and when the utility invoices come, he pays for it. He can ask me, where is the utility invoice for me to pay it?
Și mărimea acestei contribuții.
And the amount of the contribution, should we understand, was the same during 2019 and 2022?
Nu cred că în 2019
I don't think in 2019. I'm looking at the table made by the Commission, and I can see the amounts
sumele din care, cum este scrisă rubrica probabil pentru gospodărie, deci
for house management are bigger in 2020, 2021, and 22.
eu n-am documentat
I
niciodată
have never documented these expenses or contributions. I have never recorded in any way these contributions, but for sure there are such contributions, and I would like to mention, to clarify. Of course, I understand that Commission is asking me first of all about the de facto circumstances.
ulterior o să fie acordată posibilitatea
But afterwards, when you give me the possibility to expose legal arguments or justifications,
să explic
I can explain to you why
n-am străduit
I didn't push on
calcule
hard on exact calculations in order to identify what was the participation of my children, and I didn't challenge the conclusions of the Commission.
asta, vă ascult în continuare.
Now listen to you.
Trecem la fiul dumneavoastră mai mic.
So let's go to your younger son. He reached the adulthood in 2017, and you included him in your fiscal declarations as a person supported by you until 2021. In 2021, he bought an apartment, the total value of which is 840,000 Moldovan lei. According to the sales agreement, he paid the amount of 480,000 lei. And for the remaining amount of 330,000 lei, he asked for a mortgage, which until December 2022 was reimbursed in an amount of 26,000. The Commission also analyzed the debit operations conducted on the bank accounts of your son. Based on that analysis, we could conclude that a significant part of the expenses, as in the case of the other son, are designed strictly for personal purposes and don't look like household expenses. And you mentioned earlier as well, but I'd like to specify, until which time did this youngest son live together with you, with the family? How was he contributed to the expenses, common expenses, having taken into account that from the period when he bought the apartment, many of the funds from his legal incomes were designed to that apartment, either to pay the initial rate or for reimbursement, because he reimbursed quite big amount of the credit, 286,000 out of 300 something during 1 year. So not much is left for household maintenance. Well, I don't say that he provided a lot for household maintenance by Maxim.
Am zis că el a locuit
I said he lived together with us until
în
September
septembrie
2022.
apartamentul el l-a procurat
He bought the apartment based on his own efforts and the contribution of the grandparents.
bani, joace bănești, știu că
I
el
know he has borrowed some funds from my parents.
sumele nu le cunosc,
I don't know the exact amounts, though,
decizia de a procura
because the decision to purchase an apartment and the choice was his own.
cu toate dorința mea ca părinte de a
Although, as a parent,
contribui cu
I wanted to contribute with the suggestions. He rejected all that willingness of mine, and he said, "I will do it by myself." And indeed, he did it by himself.
banii care el îi primește.
All the money that he receives officially on his card.
Deci plățile s-au făcut
So the payments were done officially.
să ne ajute el, după ce el a plecat, evident că nu
After he left our family, of course, he didn't participate anymore in the expenses of our household, and these expenditures were divided, and they were. I mean, my older son Ilya was contributing to those expenses.
În anii 2000
In
și
years 20 and 21. Apparently, the deficit between incomes and expenditures was also due to expenditures you had related to the constructions you started to the real estate that you have in Bardar village. And according to the answers you presented to the Commission, the amount of the expenses reached 83,343 lei for both years cumulatively. Could you give more details about the construction works that you conducted in 2020 and 21? That's relatively recently. Yes, this I can tell you.
pot comunica mai precis pentru că s-au realizat cu implicarea
Because these were done with my direct participation. First of all, we did the uprooting of that land. We uprooted
după cei
all the shrubs and trees
voluntari.
that were there. Then we conducted terracing, so-called terracing works with a tractor, an individual with a tractor who has leveled the ground, and then we dug the foundation and consolidated it with stone, special stone.
Eu îmi cer scuze.
I apologize, I was wrong here. So after
Îndreptat terenul pentru
we leveled the ground for the first construction, we speak about years 20 and 21. This construction, with the size is 7 on 7 meters,
a fost simplu de realizat.
it was simple to do because the field was already leveled, the soil was excavated for the foundation. We built the foundation in that channel.
Armatura,
We installed the ironing,
ridicat pereții,
we erected the walls made of limestone. Some of the limestone was
beciu,
coming from the cellar that was attached to that purchased immovable property. And then we built the columns from steel and concrete.
planșa.
And then,
Și pentru momentul de față, lucrările legate
and for the time being, all the works related to that construction were stopped.
poza pe care
I submitted an image of that construction at its current state. Andrei just asked whether it was covered from 83,000. It could have cost more. I gave you just an estimate. For example, the exact cost of excavation work.
eu am străduit să deja
I don't recall. I managed to gather all the evidence for those years for all the payments, but I couldn't get a receipt for all the activities Oxai contracted or bought. You informed the Commission that a part of those expenses were covered based on the savings you had gathered, and in addition, you received 3,000 euro from each of your son, their contribution to cover partly the construction costs. You confirmed in a way, you informed that you don't have loan contracts in writing with fixed reimbursement deadlines, and some of those expenses were covered directly by your sons, directly from their bank cards. You submitted some confirming documents, but the analysis performed by the Commission, it showed that the construction materials were paid by your sons only in 2023. During the time that was not covered by the evaluation, when exactly you took the loans, how the money was transferred to you, and if fully and if in cash, or was it a loan to you but payments were made directly by the sons to the suppliers? I see your question. The money, 3,000 euro, I mentioned in the declaration when I submitted the request to participate in the vetting. They was the money received from my sons. I received this money in cash. I didn't receive it as a one-time payment. I would ask for money from my sons when I need it, and it was not because I lacked money, I didn't have money, but because sometimes my son's money were available. So they, for example, had some amount in cash and lay, and the family, my family's money was deposited. We had them in euro, and we didn't want to convert. So in order to make some purchases without exchanging the euro, I rather asked my sons to give me Moldovan lei. That was the loan, how they borrowed. When we discussed with my sons to make a calculation and for me and my wife to return the money, we calculated 2,700 euros. So he gave me another 300, so to give him back 3,000 when we were able to do so. In other words, the money wasn't given to me when I was filling out the declaration. That happened throughout 2023. And to say which son and how much money gave me, I cannot say that. All right. So this money borrowed from them, did you spend them for construction of the house or of this attachment to the house? The money mainly, the money borrowed, were given by sons to me, was given to me mainly at the end 2022, beginning or throughout 2023, because the works for the second facility, intensified in summer 2023. All right. Can we discuss the document that you submitted today, this document, and let's discuss about matter 1 and matter 2. We look at the documents gathered by the Commission and what you submitted to us. We have seen that starting from 1990 up to 2007, you had a relatively prosperous business career, which allowed you to gain sufficiently large savings to spend it later and cover the expenses for the following 15 years. Can I make a clarification? Please don't interrupt me. Wait a bit. And at a certain point, you were able to borrow 50,000 euro between 2007-2008 and the following 15 years, your legal income constantly was smaller than your expenses. So the logical question is, what is the rationale to change a relatively prosperous business career for another legal career, which I understand, based on the official data, is far too profitable. In other words, it's not covering all the expenses. That is my general comment. If I look at these 30 years of activity, I understand your question. First, I have to specify that this time where I gained bigger revenues was before 2000. And in 2003, I sold the apartment. And almost at that time, this period of time when I refer to it, as you mentioned, as well enough to and well, ended. And from that point onwards, I asked myself why I had to do. What should I do? And my business experience, businessman activities, so I realized that I cannot justify it. In other words, my experience, I'm thinking how to put it into words. I said that I was a victim of an abuse attack in 1998. So I was robbed, and I lost money, and my health was deteriorated. And because of that, this big shock made me think that the material goods a person has or possesses can always be taken away. That was the 1990 reality. You have business, you make money, and 6 months or 12 months later, if you were better off, someone will come and rob you of everything, or if not everything, of a big part of money. So this state of affairs became obvious to me, and the lack of further perspective to have a safe business activity to secure my assets and my health, and the business climate was not safe, and it was clear to me that I was no longer ready to do this business in those circumstances. So for me, what I realized that the knowledge, someone cannot be robbed of their knowledge. The knowledge stays with you, and it made me decide to be a lawyer, as my mother and my father was a prosecutor, so I had their example. And my father turned into a lawyer, into an attorney. So I decided to have a safe job with a smaller salary, but safe one. And at that point, I took law degree, I graduated, I had the internship. My hope, indeed, that I would have professional success, the expectations were higher than the reality. There are some personal traits defining the financial success of an attorney's profession. Maybe I don't have that possibility or skill. I am not very empathic. I don't show empathy with my client. I'm rather rigid. And when a contract sets certain limits of diligence and workload, and I should stop, I never stopped. I rather continued to provide more services than the amount paid by the clients, especially in those cases where the clients were low-income persons. And if you have mainly such low-income clients, you cannot earn a fortune.
Specificăția mea au fost
I hope you found my explanation sufficient.
Aveți nu viitoare date, care nu au fost date în ultimul. Nu? Da.
Mr. Ciuchitu, please tell us, on February 26, 2024, submitted to the Commission the first answers to the first round of questions. And those answers, you didn't mention any savings. You mentioned you could not remember and you didn't want to provide erroneous data. At that date, did you know about this 50,000 euro borrowing, or you recalled it later? This is a big amount, and then and now, and I didn't know that written statement is in my files, and I found a simple explanation. If the money is reimbursed, this statement in writing should be given back to the person that borrowed the money from me. And I don't know, I cannot explain why I have it in my files, whether I wrote in writing that I received all the money I had borrowed, or maybe that person simply forgot to ask me to give this statement back to that person, or maybe forgot to request it. After the money, you received it back, did you use that money for major investments? No. And if I may, I'd like to explain, answering your question. So these amounts that I managed to earn before, I did my best to keep them. As I understood, I was in need of money, and there were no other source of income. I hoped that I would have a more profitable attorney's activity or lawyer's activity. By the end of the day, the situation improved last year, and I believe I managed to change my approach in my relationship with my clients, and I saved money. That's it.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Ciuchitu, I'd like to follow up with some questions about the document provided today. This relates to the 54,000 euro loan. First, was the money that you loaned given to the borrower in a single lump sum?
Da.
Yes.
What was the form that the loan was
În
made
ce
in?
formă ați făcut acest împrumut? Sub ce formă?
What was the currency?
În ce valută? În ce valută?
Da, am înțeles. Acum am mers.
Yeah, I got it. In euro, as it mentioned in the document.
So it was a one-time
Deci-
loan of, it was given all at once in 54,000 euros in cash.
Da.
Was there any interest? Did you get any interest on the loan?
Nu.
No. That receipt note doesn't contain any mention about the interest.
Nicio clauză ascunsă.
And there was no hidden clause.
How was the loan repaid? Was it repaid in a single payment?
Nu.
No. It was returned in several installments, in 3, if I'm not wrong, in 3 installments. The first one came before term,
Și restul cu careva întârziere.
and the 2 others with some delay.
Înainte de termenul stabilit.
I mean, before the term established in the receipt note.
So does that mean it was fully repaid before the date in 2017? Or let me just ask, when was it repaid?
Deci data restituirii.
Well, the return date is indicated 15 June 2017. Some part, a smaller part, a smaller part was returned before this term. The rest of the amount was reimbursed in 2 other installments later than later than the date when this first amount was paid.
What's your relationship to the person who borrowed the money?
Deci, eu am încercat să construiesc o
I've tried to build with that person a relationship, a good relationship, in order to have a common, a joint business, where myself as a co-founder had to have a share participation, but unfortunately, apart from that transaction, we didn't have any other relationships with that person.
Export eu să continui.
I would like to continue.
Una din întrebări
One of the
la
questions
care trebuia să răspundeți la
that you had to answer in the first round of questions in the questionnaire
existența împrumuturilor
about the existence of borrowings received or provided during the evaluation period, and you didn't mention anything about this loan of 55,000 other than this morning. And our question is, why haven't you declared? Why haven't you stated this loan until now?
Deci, din câte eu mi-aduc aminte, declarațiile
As far as I remember,
ele se refereau
the statements I made, they referred to the period 2018-2022. So
clarific.
no, I clarify the first round of questions. In the first round of questions, question number 4 asked by the Commission referred to whether or not you provided or received borrowings during 2018-2022.
Deci, am înțeles.
I got it.
Eu nu puteam să dovedesc
I
această
wasn't able to prove this loan.
și
I didn't have evidences for
față de
this loan.
acest exercițiu,
And
acest proces, eu, conform regulamentului,
according to the regulation,
conceptul
I have applied the principle of objectively establishing.
ceea ce nici măcar teoretic nu poți să
So actually, I didn't mention something that I couldn't confirm even in theory,
spre deosebire de alți
because compared
colegi,
to other colleagues in this contest,
nu am putut să prezint
I wasn't able to present any
declarații
statements from that person,
cum s-a mai întâmplat.
from the borrower.
Confirmate împrumuturile dintre
Like as it happened before, that some people confirmed their borrowings through statements.
Așa și continuam cu omiterea
So I omitted
fapt economic
this transaction, this economic fact, due to the fact that I wasn't able by any means to prove this. I could have said that I do have this borrowing and this proves the existence of the funds. But then I had to make reference to the statements of another individual to invoke them as evidence, and this evidence would be subjective evidence. So I'd rather considered that it would be better not to do that in front of the Commission. Also, if I could add, if you have noticed, my position or how I prove the circumstances is always based on some materials.
spun așa, ușoare n-ar fi ele ca putere
No matter how little proving power they have, for instance, making reference to the weapons that were bought during that period, I found a document which indicates the year, and I submitted that to you.
Mulțumim.
Thank you. Mr. Ciuchitu, you mentioned that you didn't have any documents to prove the existence of these funds until you borrowed that money. You lended, sorry, that money. You had it you got it in cash after the savings you made from your activity that you had until 2020 with your company. If we look from a different perspective, could you tell us what was the purpose of that loan that you provided to that citizen?
El urma să aducă
He intended to purchase,
nu știu exact de unde
I don't know exactly where,
utilaj
to purchase some
pentru prelucrarea
agricultural equipment, some equipment to process agricultural products, to import them into Moldova. No, I'm not sure. Perhaps he wanted to purchase it in Moldova. He deals with agriculture. He has a company, something. I don't know if he has a company. I guess he does,
spunem așa, nivelul lui de trai.
because his living standards would imply for like serious and official means. So he returned it to you during 2017, 2018 in several installments. As far as I remember, in 3 installments.
O tranșă
One installment was reimbursed earlier than the deadline, and 2 installments with some delay. What was the value of each of the installments? Could you tell that?
deci peste 10.000
Over 10,000 euro first installment,
parte,
and then I think
a doua a fost
the second one
consistent.
was bigger, a bigger amount,
Vorbim despre toată suma, dar a treia era
and the third one was lower. Did he confirm to you that he invested this money, that he managed to purchase the equipment? No.
și adică la momentul când a restituit
When he reimbursed the money, he said that something's not going okay, so he is returning this
o să execute
to me, and afterwards he's going to return as we agreed. What was the advantage to borrow, to lend this amount of money to individual?
o persoană
I was looking for an individual whom I could join
într-o afacere.
in order to have a business as a co-founder,
Mă rog, ca avocat nu puteam.
not as a lawyer, because I wasn't able as a lawyer to be directly involved into such an activity. So this was stipulated, this was planned as an investment at the beginning? No.
Acțiunea asta din partea mea,
This amount that I provided
autorului, ca să obțină banii aceștia,
to the borrower.
așteptam că în urmă voi avea
So,
o atitudine reciprocă.
I thought he would have a similar attitude towards me, and this would allow to have a further cooperation. I mean, that would be mutual attitude from him.
Să excludem orice dubii. Nu a fost o investiție, dar
So
a fost
it wasn't
un
an
gest
investment,
de
but it
bunăvoință
was
din
a
partea
rather
noastră.
goodwill act from you, hoping that in a close future you will open a business with that individual. That's what I understand. That's what explains the lack of an interest, contractual interest. Yes, that's true.
Acum, dacă banii au fost restituiți
And
în
if the money was
2017,
reimbursed in
puteți să
17,
explicați
in 2017,
ce ați declarat anterior
why
Comisiei
did you
că în
state to the Commission earlier that
2017
in 2017
economiile noastre
your
sunt
savings
estimate în numerar ar fi
expressed in
fost de
cash were around 18,000 to around 20,000 euro? If they reimbursed to you in the same year 55,000 euro?
Eu nu țin minte exact dacă
I don't remember exactly
a fost restituită
if the amount was refunded totally by the end of 2017.
se prepoate
It might be
a treia tranșă.
that the third installment was refunded in 2018.
În 2007,
In 2017, I bought
în terenul din Bardă,
the land in Bardar. So some of them, there were minus some amount of money. And in addition, I kindly ask you to look over these estimations that I submitted to the Commission. As far as I remember, they are formulated in the following way: that these amounts were presented with a big margin of approximation. But you know that between 22,000 euro and 54,000 euro, the approximation margin is much bigger than the one you have stated earlier. You said between 18 and 22, and now you say that actually it could have been at least 54,000. Honorable members of the Commission, that's exactly due to this reason that I have imprecise memories. I tried rather not to make any statements and declarations, and to estimate the amounts of the years. Probably I was wrong here. But I wasn't able to present exact information for every individual year. Let's move to the following issue. During 2009-2018, your wife had in ownership a car model Mercedes A168.
The purchase price, 5,000 euro in 2009. That was purchased by your in-laws and donated to your wife. As declared, the Commission requested info about the sources of money used by your in-laws to make the purchase. As based on their official revenue declared, it seems that they didn't have the needed money to make the purchase. Based on the data our Commission has, the fact was confirmed that your in-laws worked almost all the life at the Palace of Culture in Glodeni, and their salary income in 2008 and 2009, when the vehicle was purchased, represented 28,300 lei. This income seems not enough to cover the cost of the donated vehicle. Also, given the fact that a few years later, in 2014, your father-in-law bought another car, Honda Accord, as we understand, is in his ownership. It's his property. We would like to clarify what were the sources of money your in-laws could use to buy the vehicle and donate to your wife in 2009. Yes, it is clear. The formal income declared, communicated to the Commission, not explanatory, but we need to see the general picture. My father-in-law is born in 1953. Therefore, when he was 16, he started work. He started his official work back in 70s. He is a musician, and in addition to the main job, he worked as a musician and provided services at different events, cultural events, family events, like, as everyone knows, baptizing or marriage parties. Maybe our international members might find it a bit difficult to understand. I would like to ask you in this regard, please please take a look and see in YouTube. If you search the word Moldovan wedding, you will see that a band is very important in a marriage party. This celebration nowadays, a celebration of a marriage party is different, more elaborated. When my father-in-law started working in 70s during the Soviet time, the money a band could earn was more modest, but it allowed making some savings. Over the years,
el împreună cu soția
himself with his wife managed to
și, mă rog, nu
gather money, and
treacă peste aceea îndatorire care o sunt
they had the feeling, parental feeling, to help their child, and they used that money, and for that reason they bought and donated the vehicle to my wife.
Am putea să
Can we
sintetizăm declarația noastră în felul
briefly
următor.
state you said that during their professional activity, your father-in-law, in addition to their main formal job at the Palace of Culture in Glodeni, in addition to the salary, so he earned some money for providing services at private events, and that allowed him to have the savings. He might have had other sources. Well, I cannot ascertain, but I say that this is your explanation. Yes, this is correct in principle.
dar nu ține cont de
But we can think of a possibility of having other sources of income because my laws inherited from their parents, after their parents died, some amounts. I don't know the exact amount. And my mother-in-law inherited after the death of her parents that resided in Belarus. I cannot ascertain the amount, whether she received any amount or not, but to incline the balance of probability as provided or as the committee mentions to motivate the decisions, these assumptions should be taken into account, in my opinion. Thank you. The next question relates to a vehicle owned by you. Mercedes E200, manufactured in 2000. You purchased in 2018. In the declaration submitted to Commission, you mentioned a value of 5,600 euro. The purchase agreement registered with the Public Service Agency for that vehicle has a contract price of 10,000 lei. The Commission requested clarification regarding the reasons, mentioning that price, obviously underestimated in the contract. And you provided the following explanations, that amount, this price, 10,000, was included because the seller insisted to have it in the contract, and the Public Service Agency official recommended to include this price, which is a standard price included by the parties to such contract, and you didn't have any reason to object introducing this price. And now, questions now would be, how do you think including a fictive price in a contract of purchase sales, is it an infringement of the law? Is this a breach of law? I don't believe this is a breach of law in general, but I should allow for permission to explain what is exactly the understanding of that breach you are asking me about. Because the deviations from the legal norm are of different forms. Referring to a civil breach, it generates its consequences, but if we try to look at, as far as I understand, whether such a deed is an ethical breach, we should look at it through other norms or rules that have to be prohibiting or imperative. If you would like to tell me exactly what you mean, that it is okay. If not, I will give you a general, wide answer, because I formulated an explanation in a request of mine. Please give me some time to find it, and I will refer to the what I wrote there to present my position, because it is related to how I understand the norms of the law. Just a second.
Da. Deci eu nu pot identifica respectiva notiță.
I am sorry, I cannot find that document. Maybe I missed something. Maybe I
Cele prezentate.
something regarding what I submitted. But I will formulate the answer to my understanding. So
Am vizionat o
I
audiere a unui
have watched hearing of another candidate where the chair asked him about the legality
actul ăsta, contractul
of the purchase agreement signed in similar circumstances.
Eu m-am pornit de
I started from the assertion of the honored chair of the Commission in analyzing the facts, and I concluded that the purchase agreement you have asked me, and that was mentioned by the honored chair, is not an agreement as such. An agreement or a contract, as we know, is an mutual expression of the willingness of the buyer and seller that will have legal effects. Still, I managed to find that document, that declaration, that documented the conclusion of a real contract of purchase. As the real purchase contract was the agreement between me and the seller that happened before we went to the Agency for Public Services to register the vehicle according to the official procedure and to write the ownership right into the public register, to have the transfer of the ownership from the seller to buyer. And this contract, I insist that that is the contract, was signed in writing under the law. It was implemented, executed by both, enforced by both parties, and don't have any wrongdoings or mistakes as to how it was concluded under the law. I would like to ask you to think of a law or a norm that is in our society, how vehicles are sold and purchased in our society. Very often, the buyer and the seller sign a document. They transfer the vehicles, but parties don't go to the authorities to have the official transfer and registration of the ownership for the buyer. But the seller signs a paper allowing the buyer to make this official registration, transfer of ownership when the time is good, convenient. If someone, or in case of a dispute, and such disputes happen, the ownership is recognized as being the ownership of the one that ownership was transferred to, but it is not opposable to third parties with the following consequences. Therefore, I mean this case law, such instances to show that I acted based on a goodwill when I signed the contract, concluded a contract, valid contract. Now, let me explain what is the value, the award of this contract, in my opinion. And you obtained this contract from the authorities. If we take a look on the website of the Public Service Agency in the needed documents for registration of vehicles part, we can see the first document in that list, which is the document confirming ownership. Obviously, that document confirming the ownership is that statement, that contract of sales and purchase, but authorities do not accept such statements as such a document and insist that to have the buyer and seller in their office to sign it in their presence, because they receive some, they provide the service as a paid service, and they not always insist. They don't even ask what is the value of the transaction, but they give you pre-populated form, a form with some information there. I didn't object it because it was not my task to protect the rights, certain rights or interests, whether the state has any interest in this case.
I do not have such a burden, neither as a citizen nor as a lawyer. This kind of obligation is not put on my shoulders by neither rule, nor ethical, nor fiscal, nor of other character. Because of that reason, and not only because of that reason, I consider that there has been no ethical violation. That's all. Could you please tell us? Could I admit that such a practice that you have mentioned does exist, but in your case, based on your own statements, it results that Public Service Agency didn't insist, didn't push on this price, but actually the seller pushed on this price. What could have the reason from which the seller pushed on you to indicate 10,000 or instead of 115,000? I could just make assumptions and in answering this question, because selling a good means earning some amount, and from this amount some part can be taxable income to be paid by the seller, and perhaps he used this logic. I don't know, but if this should concern me, if this aspect should concern myself, I can't look at the people with whom I interact in the view of ill faith. I do have a good faith towards this person. My belief, I'm confident that he's going to fulfill his legal obligations. If it's the case, there might be no case because the cost of the car could be smaller or higher than the amount with which it was purchased. So, making an imagination exercise. If your supposition is true, indeed the seller wanted to avoid paying some taxes, for instance, income tax for capital growth, your capital gain, your agreement to stipulating this price of 10,000, did this help in him doing this tax evasion? Hypothetically? Yes. What could have happened if, let's imagine, in a week after registering the ownership rights or registration of the car, you could have identified some serious vices that would have determined you to cancel the agreement. What amount could you ask in such a situation? The amount indicated in that receipt note, because as I said, this is the initial agreement concluded which produces the legal effects. And the receipt would replace a sales and the purchase agreement, that receipt note, as I explained earlier. And I think that that receipt note represents the agreement. And for me to understand it correctly, your opinion is that an agreement based on which ownership rights are being registered won't prevail, will have no priority over a receipt note concluded between two individuals which has no effect for third parties. If we compare those two documents, depending on the position of the third parties, it might or might not prevail. If we speak about the fact that the car was pledged, then after the sale, so it means that I achieved my ownership rights registered in the public register, then this contract, this agreement would prevail. Or the consequences of concluding such an agreement would prevail. But if we speak about a right, about the rights of the parties who concluded such an agreement, I mean the parties of that receipt note, then the receipt note would prevail. Let's move to the following question, related to the construction permits for your properties in Bardar. In 2021, you started building an attachment of 30 square meters next to the real estate you have in Bardar. Also in 23, on the same movable property, you started building a house of 150 square meters, for which you haven't obtained a construction permit. At the same time, you mentioned that requesting a building permit would have increased the cost by 1,000 or 2,000 euro, and nothing would have changed. The first question is whether when you started these constructions, you knew about the obligations provided in law for starting construction works. And how could have been this influenced? How could this have produced this kind of costs if you requested a permit? In order to get a building permit, you need to have a design. And for having such design, the payment, I mean the cost of this design would be 10 to 20. But prices are changing. So for every square meter, it's 10 to 20 euro. And you have built it without a technical design? Yes, without a technical design.
v-ați pus întrebarea sau nu v-ați gândit să faceți
At the same time, you haven't thought to have a technical design because of just security reasons or safety, having assuring the safety of the building, even for your family, not speaking about the third parties. Yes, of course, the safety of a construction.
un scop în care sunt instituite reglementările în domeniu.
There are regulations about this,
Și pe mine m-a preocupat.
and I was concerned about that aspect,
A fost soluționat
but we solved it in the following way.
prima mea facultate.
I have a degree in engineering and cadastre, land relations. So I have some knowledge in the field of mathematics, physics, constructions, which I studied, including geodesics, which I studied at the university.
Eu am
Secondly,
elaborat proiecte
I developed myself technical designs,
care le-am realizat, cele mai simple,
and the most simple in terms of technologies, using technical solutions
unanim aplicabile
which are applicable
țara noastră,
widely in our country, for our seismic zone.
carcasa de beton armat,
I mean the carcass made of reinforced concrete
vergi de armatură,
with the reinforced bars with of a diameter of 12
milimetri.
millimeters.
Nu știu dacă este interesant comisiei.
I'm not sure if that's interesting for the Commission, but I could detail
Exigențele
what are the technical requirements for
construcția
constructions of this type. What should be the thickness of the concrete over the reinforced bars? What should be the distance between the
aceste vergi formează
other elements of the building which form the carcass of the reinforced carcass? I do have such knowledge. Aside from that, I asked
consultanța
for consultations from my friends who are specialists in this field, in the field of they are architects,
clienți ai mei,
and also my clients
constructori proprii,
who are constructors.
în a construi
They do have experience in building, and they have checked on all the stages of my construction, every single stage.
atâția prieteni.
And having so many friends and clients in this field,
Care era dificultatea?
why was it so difficult to have that technical design, and even having ability, skills in developing such a technical design for you?
prietenii mei,
Well, my friends,
oricum trebuie remunerați.
I would have needed to pay them anyway.
Doi, pentru a întocmi un proiect
And in order to develop a technical design that should be approved, this needs to be done by an authorized specialist. If I developed that design, authorities wouldn't have approved it, of course.
dacă
Thank you.
să completez
If you allow me to add to the explanations about this question.
Întrebare legată de ce?
The question related to what? This last one?
Da, vă rog.
Yeah,
Eu am
please.
spus doar că nu mai am întrebări.
I just said I have no more questions.
în raport
So,
cu respectarea legii.
If we speak about the observance of the law in the field of constructions has been adopted with well-defined purposes. First of all, security and safety of the building. Secondly,
Este respectarea regimului
I need to observe the architectural and urbanistic rules. This house was built in Bardar town. In our village, we don't have any urbanistic plan for the town or for the village. So there are no requirements about how the buildings look on the outside. At the same time, I obeyed by the general rules on where the constructions should be located in relationship to the roads and the borders, the limits. And I secured a distance that meets the rules. That's what I wanted to add.
Nu pot să nu vă întreb.
I can't help asking you. So, based on this last explanation of yours, it raises a question. Can we opt and choose laws we obey and laws we don't obey? Can we make such a choice to obey or not certain laws or not? I understand your question. The laws must be obeyed, of course, but where a representative of the local authority, of an authority, says that the law must be complied with and full stop, for me, as a lawyer, actually it's a start of an analysis, and I analyze the boundaries of the scope of the law, within which I can act. The fact that I, in principle, complied with the spirit of the letter of the laws is the fact that the legislator recently amended the law, and according to this amendment, construction can be registered by someone at their personal responsibility to resolve a certain this type of matters or situations.
All right. Do any of the commission members have any additional questions? All right, Mr. Ciuchitu, you had asked earlier about making a statement. Have you had a chance to say what you want to say, or are there some things that you'd like to add?
Yes, I would like to make this statement, and I hope it will be as brief as you requested, but I hope so. But I hope I will not upset you. But I would like to mention some illegalities relative to the rules of law on the operations of the committee. Let me find the notes I would like to refer to. Could you please mention based on what reasons do you want to mention the illegalities, to raise the illegalities? These exceptions, these illegalities are based on the contradictions between the law of the rules of procedure of the Commission and the national legal norms. First, I would like to refer to the provisions regulating the criteria to assess the financial integrity of candidates. Especially, I refer to the methodology inserted in the annex to the rules of procedure. I consider that it is contrary to the provision Article 8, paragraph 4b of the law 26, which states that the methodology, the purchase of the assets and the declared income, we can see that the lawyer is not making this the task of the subject to justify spending based on statistics. These are exact provisions, the assets, property gained, and declared income. 2. There is a national methodology in Law 82 on integrity, 132 on National Integrity Authority, and 133 on declaring assets and interests. Implementation of this law, of this related law, is provided for in Articles 4 and 15 of Law 26. The national methodology doesn't provide for taking into consideration the spending found based on statistics. In addition, the national methodology establishes a serious margin to disconsider the economic values when assessing, appreciating the integrity. The declaration form for assets and interests approved in an annex to Law 133 for various types of economic values. It sets the minimum margin of consideration within the limits of 10 to 20 minimum salaries per economy for the specific year. And here I would like to draw your kind attention to the context of the form. Please ask the speaker to speak closer to the mic.
Mr. Ciuchitu, when you're talking, you need to speak into the microphone so the interpreters can hear you.
Da, neapărat. Deci, de exemplu,
So, for example,
compartimentul 4,
Chapter 4,
bunuri mobile în țară
movable domestic and foreign assets, letter C,
colecții de arte din
art
numismatică,
collections,
de arme,
arms and other, which value exceeds 20 average monthly salaries per economy.
legislatorul indică
The lawmakers specify that
asemenea bunuri
such assets below the established ceiling or limit of a value
nu sunt
are
obligatorii spre declarare.
must not be declared if they do not exceed the limit.
Aceste sume
Such amounts
sunt
are
considerabile
considerable if we take into consideration the
mediu pe economie,
average salary per economy.
undeva am
I have somewhere the amounts calculated in my notes. If I find them, I will mention them later.
reglementări similare se
Similar regulations are provided for in declaration form as regards other chapters of the form.
de exemplu,
For example,
bunuri transmise cu titlul
assets transferred free as donation by family members, letter D of chapter 4.
nu dau citire
I will not read the full name.
Aici limita este
The
stabilită
limit
în
set
de 10 salarii.
is 10 minimum salaries.
Se mai conțin asemenea
Similar provisions are in the same form, which shows that the national lawmakers, Moldovan lawmakers, set other less rigid criteria than the criteria set by the Commission in its rule of procedure.
de acord că
I agree that the willingness of the Commission when assessing the candidates is worth all the respect, but I consider that the methodology must comply with the law.
dacă în
Or,
legea specială
while the
numărul
special law 126 doesn't provide for any contradictory norms, conflicting norms that would will be contrary to the national methodology, therefore, that methodology must be applied.
alte
Other
argumente țin de
arguments refer to the following. The methodology in the annex to the rule is based on the European Court case law in Soksaj versus Albania case. But that case
nu poate fi aplicat
may not be applied, is not applicable for several reasons.
în primul rând
First,
din motiv că
because
în baza ei sunt
they formulated based on it tasks that are not in the national law, a fact which is contrary to the provisions of Article 17 and 53 of the European Convention.
În al doilea rând,
Secondly,
luarea convenției
the convention provides for the duty of the member states to comply with the human rights, but is not providing a duty for citizens. Thirdly, the national regulations of Albania differ from the Moldovan regulations,
care excep această
which
cauză
accept this case
jurisprudență curții,
from the case law of the court
în cazul
in order to be applied in the case of Moldova.
chestiunii
The first matter I would like to refer to is the transfer of the burden of proof. In its decisions,
Comisia
the Commission
a invocat
has mentioned the provisions,
sau mai bine zis,
or better
formulări
say, formulations
din hotărârea
from decision SOCSAJ of the European Court for Human Rights,
care sunt inserate
which
în
are
paragraful
inserted in
152.
Article
Nu le dau citire întrucât membrii
52,
cunosc.
because I will not read because our members know them, but the same judgment,
La punctul 12
point 12,
este stipulat în
stipulates
conformitate cu secțiunea
under the section
52
52 of the law on verification and Article 9, 5 in an annex to the Constitution.
este abrevierea organului
This is the acronym for the Albanian authority
este investit cu sarcini similare
that has similar mandate as our commission.
cuvântul comisia.
I will refer to the Albanian Commission has transferred the burden of proof to the applicant.
În cele citate,
Based on the aforementioned, we can notice that
temei pentru transfer
grounds
au
for the
observat
transfer
legislației naționale.
were the national legal provisions were in the law were the reasons that are in the law and in the Constitution. In our case,
Moldovenesc
the Moldovan lawmakers didn't
sau nu a prevăzut asemenea
provided for such a transfer.
alt aspect care
Another
la
aspect
fel diferă
which also is different
este acela
is
că
the one
verificarea candidatului
is that verification of the subject is done
a fost să
for the period of time where he has
de avere și
to
interes.
submit the asset and interest, income and assets declaration, a subject, and this is a special subject.
De exemplu, în cazul meu,
In my case, for example, I am not a subject of declaration.
nu pot fi
I
asimilat
cannot be assimilated to
reclamante din cauza
applicant of that Albanian case, and
concept nu poate fi
this concept is not applicable relative to myself or to myself.
La fel este un
Likewise,
aspect
there
care
is an aspect that is different from the Moldovan law, which is as follows.
cum am menționat
As the European Court mentioned in its judgment regarding that case,
iau în considerație
they shall take into consideration, or Albanian authorities must take into consideration only the income that was taxed. That
pot admite că am
I can admit that I
făcut o traducere
made
nu chiar
an
exact.
an inaccurate translation of the judgment's provisions, but the Moldovan law, tax law,
De venituri are impunere.
doesn't have taxes for all kind of income, inheritance, capital gains, as a result of sales of real estate, income earned, received from other countries. There are exceptions of income that is not subject to taxation. We must take into consideration where the Commission establishes the direction they have to incline the balance of probability.
Aparte vreau să menționez
In addition, I'd like to mention there is a need to take into consideration the application of presumption under Article 47(3) of the Moldovan Constitution on the legality of asset, the presumption under the integrity law 82 in Article 4 when the presumption of good faith of the law to implement the provisions of the law and the presumption of integrity, professional integrity of public agents and of public authorities. The goodwill presumption under Article 10 of Civil Code current in force and Article 9 before amended, a presumption of owning money of up to 500,000 lei, which is provided for in Article 226(7) of Tax Code of Moldova. Given the fact that those provisions are less popular and less known, may I read them?
No, you don't need to read us the laws because we can identify the laws ourselves. So you should try to bring your remarks to some conclusion.
Am înțeles.
Yes, I see. Thank you.
Deci, în consecință,
As a result, I would like to kindly ask the Commission to,
acele prevederi a regulamentului
so as those rules, norms that are contrary to the law to not be used in order to give an appreciation to my financial integrity. And I would like to present some considerations on ethical integrity. I also found some,
dar aici foarte scump.
but very briefly, I would like to refer.
Mr. Ciuchitu, I should be clear. If there are some legal provisions you want to call to our attention, you can do that in writing, and it would be more efficient than you're trying to read us the content of laws. That's the point of my remark.
Am înțeles.
I see.
Onorat președinte, eu
Honored
nu o să mai
Chair,
citesc,
I will no longer read the
foarte
legal provisions,
elemente care
but
merită
some
atenție.
elements that are
Pentru
worth
că mai am nevoie de
paying
câteva
attention. I
minute
need a
ca
few
să
more
vorbesc
minutes
vostru.
to
Și voi
take
fi succint.
out of your time, and I will be very brief.
Propunerea voastră
Your
o
suggestion,
respect
I
și
would
voi
like to respect your
prezenta
suggestion. I will
un
submit
scris
you
cu argumentele date.
all the
Ce
arguments in
spun
writing.
foarte
What I want
scurt
to very
este
briefly mention is
clar. Deci,
rather clear.
articolul 27,
Article 27, para 3 of the rules of procedure is not compliant to the law. 26, Article 8 of Law 26, 2A, because the contents of the first, the content of the law says didn't infringe the ethical rules. The regulations changed the formulation, the wording. It refers to didn't comply with or complied with the ethical provisions. The qualifying element, the severity, the seriousness was eliminated from the wording
componenței delictuale
of the
inserate în regulament.
in the regulation as to the infringement or the breach aspect. Now, point 4, the shortcoming that I found is about the following. The Commission expanded the scope of verifying the ethical integrity to cover other
Părți a vieții
parts of the subject's life,
decât activitatea
except for professional life. In my opinion, the contents of the Article 8.2a
o singură concluzie.
gives rise to one conclusion: the verification shall cover only professional activity. Only professional activity should be verified. I will not dare to take more any of your time. Thank you for your time and attention.
That's all from my side.
All right. Any follow-up questions by any members of the commission? Mr. Ciuchitu, if you wish to submit something in writing, I'd ask you to do so promptly. I would think it sounds like you've prepared your analysis, so do you think you could do that within, say, the next several days?
Neapărat, săptămâna viitoare vă transmit.
For sure, next week I'll send to you everything in written.
Vă mulțumesc.
Thank you. And thank you also for your submissions and your answers to the Commission's questions today. After the hearing, the Commission will approve an evaluation decision stating its conclusion whether the subject meets the criteria for ethical and financial integrity under Law Number 26. The Commission will strive to complete its decision and announce its conclusion as soon as possible, and it generally seeks to do so within a month after a subject's public hearing. This hearing is now closed. Good day to everyone.